please welcome to the stage Dr. Laura Nelson and Connor Prochaska.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Nelson, as the voice indicated. Unless you think I'm rude, I want to just tell you a little bit about what Connor and I are going to do up here. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on who I am and what I do, and then Connor's going to do the same, and then we're going to have a conversation, talk about some things that we're working on independently and things we're working on together, and maybe ways that we can expand our partnership. And hopefully we'll keep you stimulated. Certainly, Chairman Chatterjee's comments were fascinating on what's happening in the energy space. And I am passionate about energy because, as he said, it is fundamental to our quality of life. And that's why I've been working in energy for over 20 years. I think it's close to 25 now, but then I have to admit how old I am, which I don't like to do. But I have the great honor presently to serve as the energy advisor for Governor Gary Herbert in Utah. And in fact, he was one of the first governors to come out with a proclamation for Clean Energy Week. And so I really want to congratulate and celebrate CREZ for the work that they're doing in this space, because this bipartisan approach to coming together to talk about the real challenges we face is what has to happen. And it's great that we all take our hats off and we start talking about what are the solutions, what's the future that we want that's going to deliver affordable, reliable, resilient, and clean energy for everyone. Because that's what it's really about. It's not just for some folks, especially when there are over 1 billion people on the planet that don't have access to energy today. And still, energy poverty is a real thing. I was just in California having some conversations about this, and it's amazing that even here in the US, we've got significant limited access to affordable energy. So what we're doing in Utah is we're looking at the innovation space. How can we drive new opportunities that will allow for integration of more renewable energy resources that can change the way that we use our conventional resources, for example, by ramping coal to support the integration of these resources, and of course, looking at energy storage. We're fortunate, I should mention, to have a national lab as a neighbor over in Idaho, Idaho National Labs, and we do a lot of partnering with them, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that too. And I'm able to do this because another hat I wear is that I serve as the executive director of the Governor's Office of Energy Development. And this is an office that he created in 2011, established in statute in 2012. And we have a very simple mission, and that is to advance Utah's energy and minerals economy, because they are certainly related. Strategic minerals are going to be critical to realizing new renewable energy opportunities as well as storage opportunities. So I'm very excited to be with you all here today and talk more about some of the things that we're doing in Utah and how we're continuing to build our partnership with our federal agency that I think has a similar mission to what we're doing. So, Connor, turn it to you.
Well, thank you, Laura. This is really exciting to be here, and it's really exciting for me to be here at National Clean Energy Week because I serve as the first Chief Commercialization Officer for the Department of Energy. And the first time I publicly got to say that was actually here at National Clean Energy Week last year. And I think at the time, I wasn't 100% sure what I was getting into and what we were doing. And I'll tell you a little bit about the challenges, a little bit about what we're doing. It is a big challenge. At the Department of Energy alone, we spend $18 billion a year on research and development. We want to ensure that development, that research makes the maximum impact that it possibly can on behalf of the U.S. taxpayer that puts it forward and on behalf of the world, really, that'll move it forward. It is a big challenge. We've got a lot of people that are behind us. As I talk to the tech transfer teams across our 17 national labs and 5 facilities in the Department of Energy, we talk a lot about the fact that this mission, this tech transition mission, getting research, amazing research, out into the world to make a difference, make an impact, and go work towards our goals of cleaner energy, lower emissions. Everybody's on board, both sides of the aisle on the Hill. The White House, tremendous support from the Lab to Market initiative, which I also co-chair at the National Science and Technology Council. From the Secretary himself, who created this new position as the Director of Office of Technology Transitions, which was created in 2015, but also elevating the whole mission and giving us the resources, the people, and the flexibility to go out and attack this mission. So it's a big mission, but I've got my Bigfoot socks on here if you can't see them. And what it says on there is, it's a picture of Bigfoot and it says, "Believe in yourself." Get it? I thought they were funny. But the point being that as my grandfather used to say, if you're not having fun, it's your own darn fault. Because everyone is involved in this mission. Everybody's excited about it. There's not many people that can't get behind creating a new economy and new ways to progress us forward through new energy innovation. And it's not just energy innovation. At the Department of Energy, we do research across the spectrum. We just created the Artificial Intelligence Technology Office that the Secretary just created 2 weeks ago that will advance medical sciences. It will advance urban mobility. It will advance, if you name it, artificial intelligence will be involved in it. And the Department of Energy, is primarily situated through our supercomputers, which we have 4 of the 10 best and fastest computers in the world. We've announced the creation of the next and first 3 exascale computers in the world that are going to take us to the next step in clean energy technology. So that is all to be said. First off, I'm excited to be here a year into this process and this program, and as we expand into a new era of not just research and then hoping that it finds its way out and makes an impact, but being a little less accidental about our connections and a little more purposeful about what we do at the Department of Energy when it comes to research and development. And at the core of that is working closely with our regional partners. Regions, cities, states, they are the ones that are willing to take on the challenges and take on the risk of trying some new things out, seeing how it works. At the federal government, as you just heard from the chairman, it's our responsibility at FERC and DOE and FERC, 2 different things, but at the federal level, it's our responsibility to give them the tools, the runway, and the ability to do that. And one of the places that has been doing it a lot is Utah. And so as we sit here and we have this conversation, we're trying not to miss anything we already talked about, because we have a lot to talk about and we've got a lot of great opportunities. Not even opportunities, we've got a lot of growing seeds going on right now that we've been able to accomplish with the cooperation between the Department of Energy and the state of Utah. So excited to go into it.
Great. Thank you, Connor. I really appreciate that. You know, the risk is really a challenge. When we look at research and development and how, you bridge the valley of death that we all hear about, right? And the lead times are so long to get some of these innovations online. And I want to mention a specific initiative that I consider that Utah has been a key partner in this, and that's small modular nuclear reactors.
Absolutely.
And we're looking to have 600 megawatts of nameplate capacity. I understand it's going to actually operate at more than that, of small modular reactors installed at the INL site, 2025. And this has been a significant partnership with DOE, with Utah Association of Municipal Power Systems, who's going to secure and contract for most of that power. I know INL is going to use some of it, but here's the challenge. You've got the challenge, right? To really demonstrate a return on investment from doing this R&D. But the lead times, just like the example for NuScale is the developer for this, the company for this. It's so long. So I'm interested in what have you learned in the last year?
It is. It's challenging. One of the things we often talk about, and I'll answer the small question, then I'll go to the nuclear question. Sorry if I said it wrong. I'm from Texas and grew up with George Bush. But the issue we always talk about, specifically in clean tech and hard tech, is this isn't a software, this isn't an app, and everybody's heard it, right? And everybody's seen a panel that we get up there and we're all talking about different parts of the community, the research community, the end user in a utility or something, a financier, usually from a VC, and the VCs traditionally say, well, you know what, we have 3 to 5 year hold periods and 10-year LLPs, we're just not going to do it. Well, okay, that's great. That's a model. What's a different model? And one of the things that we are discussing at the Department of Energy and then at a larger scale across the entire federal research and development area at the White House, at the Lab to Market initiative I mentioned, is what is the model? There's about 1,000 different mechanisms and things. No, we don't have to have Congress necessarily create anything new. There's programs that exist. There's funding mechanisms. There's tax credits. There's things that are out there that if we can corral them in the correct way, they could be some really powerful ways to move this industry forward. And that, when I say it takes help, I don't think it takes the government to do something. It takes the government to demonstrate and to show, hey, this is actually how a model could work. And as inventive as the financial community is, they'll find a way to figure that out. And so we're looking into that. How do we best do that? So that's kind of a global. The project at Idaho National Lab that will be an amazing modular reactor project, that project is at the forefront of exactly how the department, it is Idaho National Lab land, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody knows how big Idaho National Lab is. It's one of my favorite stats. It's 900 square miles. It's a significant chunk of land up there. But this is an exciting program that has been a long time in the making and working day and night to get it through. In some ways, that's encouraging that we are committed to it to the degree we are, but discouraging that it has to be that hard. It doesn't have to be. And hopefully, as a first mover, that will help others behind it to help the industry. But that doesn't happen without the relationship between the states and the federal government and industry as we work forward to some of these new and exciting ideas.
Well, and I want to pick up on something you said there, because industry, that's really key, right?
Right.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get these industry partners to come in, and you've mentioned it's challenging. How do you do it? How do you go out and do this matchmaking?
Well, and that's exactly what it is. The Department of Energy has always been very good at putting a bunch of scientists on stage so they can talk about how molecules bounce off of each other. What we haven't done a whole lot of is inviting industry in to talk about some really exciting opportunities that exist in our national labs. Bringing them in to talk about the changing and increasing entrepreneurial culture that is existing, and part of it's generational. As new researchers come in, they're excited about the thought of creating a new idea. They're not necessarily always just there to stay behind the workbench of a lab for an entire career and make sure they publish papers. Some of the things we're doing is encouraging not just businesses to come in, but how do we encourage those researchers to be more entrepreneurial? We've actually begun grading our science labs on how well they work towards a commercialization strategy. And I want to put the caveat on that. That is not moving away from the Department of Energy's primary mission of basic science. That's what we do. We are not here to go create a fully functional widget. We're here, I use this analogy because it kind of frames it up, is your Butterball turkey at Thanksgiving is wrapped in DOE technology. All right, now your Butterball, they weren't designing protection around a food to prevent airborne illnesses. That was some basic science to see how material science works and some molecular chemistry. Then somebody said, well, this can be a strip of plastic, and oh, look, it blocks airborne illnesses. And then boom, you have a product. And so encouraging people to understand where these occur and what they do. So a couple things we do. We do our Innovation X Lab series. Our next one is actually Wednesday and Thursday of next week in Chicago on artificial intelligence. These are industry-focused outreach conferences or summits, day and a half long, to talk about the amazing technology we've had. We've also done them in storage. Our second one was in grid modernization. Our third one was in advanced manufacturing. Going forward, we're going to have one in biomanufacturing. We're going to have one in quantum information sciences. Some things that can have a real impact if industry can grab a hold and be aware. We want to minimize the amount of people who say, I didn't know the Department of Energy did that, because that happens all the time. And then the second part is making sure that there's the promotion, there's access. We do that through our lab partnership service, labpartnering.org. You can go on there. There's 38,000 patents, 7,000 text summaries. There's 150 researchers from across our complex that you can reach out and touch and ask questions. And then there's our user facilities, like our supercomputers and our light sources that industry can use to progress forward in their sciences. And then the last is making sure we have the right policies. So promotion, access, and policies.
Well, and that's what we do in Utah is really try to create this policy landscape, which is all of the above. on energy so that we can drive innovation across the board. So I'd
Well,
like,
and look, you know, I think a lot of people may not know. I mean, Utah's had some pretty solid hits lately.
Yeah, yeah.
Hydrogen storage, some great emission reduction, 15%.
yeah, so I'd love to tell you about that. I'd love to tell all of you about that. Of course, I think Utah is pretty great. And we really have had a policy of all of the above on energy options. We also have a greenhouse gas reduction target since 2008, 20% by 2025. We're well set to meet that, looking at how we can continue to update that. As you mentioned, we've had 15% plus in the last decade. What's really, I think, important about that is that we have done it without a mandate. We've done it with a goal and a target, and we've also done it without increased cost for power and for energy generally. And I think it's because we are looking at these technological opportunities across the board. Let me mention just a few of them that I think are really key. I want to start with geothermal. We continue to be huge geothermal proponents, and as you know, we received the grant for the Frontier Observatory for Research in Geothermal Energy, the FORGE grant, $140 million for essentially an underground national lab to look at innovative ways to develop geothermal power. And this, I think, is going to be an opportunity to do exactly what you're talking about. We're going to bring in industry to say, test out your technologies. You know, let's work together on how we can generate clean baseload energy less expensively than we do today with geothermal. So that's very, very exciting. We're third in the country today for geothermal production, but we would like to continue to grow, and we think it can be significant for the region, especially as we see more solar energy coming online. We hear a lot about California. I don't want to say what that curve is called because everybody knows what it's called, and it's growing into a goose, I'll tell you that. So, and it's not just because of what's happening in California. We're seeing the whole West is increasing the amount of renewables that it's bringing online. And we have ways that we're dealing with that today so we don't have to curtail that renewable energy by looking at markets. So we're a participant in the energy imbalance market, getting those real-time opportunities, which has resulted in the ramping of coal and gas today. But the other thing is storage.
Yep.
So that's the second thing I want to talk about, energy storage. Batteries are fabulous, and I think that we're going to see continued penetration of batteries. Pumped hydro is still number one when it comes to energy storage. I think it's 2% of total generation in the country today, 95% of the storage that is happening. But where we're seeing the growth is in lithium ion. In 2016, it was 100% of the growth in storage was all lithium ion batteries. Well, there's only so much lithium in the world, and the other challenge is that we're looking at those hourly shifts. What are we going to do about seasonal shifts? Utah has seen a significant growth in renewable energy, solar particularly, 150% in 5 years. So how are we going to manage that? It's got to be large-scale storage. So Mitsubishi Hitachi Power Systems has announced, first in kind, 1,000-megawatt storage facility located in Utah. It's going to consist of hydrogen storage. It's going to be compressed air energy storage. It's going to be flow batteries, and it's going to be fuel cells. And that brings me to the next, I think, big game changer, and that's going to be hydrogen. Now, people have been saying that for, 30 years, and of course, California has spent a lot of money on the hydrogen highway. But if we can look at these green hydrogen solutions, and we've got a lot of land in Utah. I know someone was talking earlier, Maryland, about not having a lot of land. We do. And so these places where it makes sense to do these large-scale projects and get the transmission that Chairman Chatterjee talked about to deliver these resources, we can, I think, have the promise of a clean energy future.
Laura, let me ask you, so, we're talking a lot about our federal and state regional relationship. What do you think we could do better, we being the regional or federal or state, to get that next leg? Because that's not the end of the path, right? The end of the path is when it actually ends up in a consumer's hands, but before that, industry's hands.
Well, maybe I'll talk just a little bit about the hydrogen space because
Sure.
I know that DOE is doing a lot in that space right now to kind of cause industry to come along and participate in how we can create green hydrogen. I guess the first thing I would say is keep it up. Continue that work to be on the forefront of those innovations. And I think it is important to make the investments in the R&D because these are very expensive projects and it's going to be difficult to get them commercialized truly. And I think that the first space for hydrogen, of course, is going to be in providing for electricity. And then we've got to get the generators right. Now, the private sector is working on this today. We know that we've heard, I should say, that they can burn up to 30% now in combustion for hydrogen, but how are we going to get it to 100%? It burns a lot hotter than natural gas. So I think that's a role for DOE and a DOE industry partnership on how we get there. And then I got to talk a little bit about batteries because, we're going to have to advance lithium-ion battery systems. And we've got Utah State University working on that today, I think partnering also with DOE. And then the third thing I'm going to mention is carbon capture.
Sure.
That's going to be a key game changer. Carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. And so I think DOE can continue to play a significant role in how we're going to do carbon capture going forward, because not just power plants, as you know, it's industrial systems, it's across the board.
Sure, and I'll put a plug right in for our fossil energy office that just 2 weeks ago announced $110 million in carbon capture utilization sequestration awards. When we talk about, we're talking about similar things, storage, we've got our DAYS project, we've got mass storage projects. It's really exciting to see the projects and to see the way that we interact. And also with the Forge project, what you talked about was how we're bringing in industry to a facility. And that's something that we don't talk about enough at the Department of Energy. I think specifically in our role as the Office of Technology Transitions and Chief Commercialization Officer, the thought is, well, if that's just about getting a widget out into the market, there's a lot more than that. We've got world-class facilities that are there for the use of basic science and sometimes industry that can come in and use those. That's our supercomputers, it's our light sources, proton sources, whatever it may be. We want to make sure that we're maximizing those facilities. We want to make sure that Princeton Plasma Lab, one of our fusion energy national lab, well, there's now a fusion industry floating around the United States. And you can go get a place in an industry park to do your fusion projects, but you're probably not going to get the right power sources that you need in Menlo Park to run a fusion experiment. So how do we connect to make sure that the facilities we've existed to do some early stage research that's enabled that industry to create is also being married up? How do we get the user facilities maximized? How do we help these fledgling industries to ensure that the barriers that exist that are sometimes insurmountable by small businesses, that's a role. That's a place where the federal government, in the continuation of the research that we pioneered, can move forward and to help. And Forge is just another example of that on the geothermal side.
Yeah, agree. And because you mentioned Menlo Park, I want to identify.
Nothing against Menlo Park.
I just want to identify one other area that I think is key in Maryland. Also, I think mentioned this on the last panel. It's this building to grid issue, and we appreciate DOE is actually supporting some work today between the National Association of Energy Officials and NARUC to look at building to grid integration because. Our system is really changing. We're getting more distributed resources online. And how are we going to really manage kind of this Internet of Things world and, in fact, use these systems as load shaping systems and I think clean peak resources even. In fact, we're doing a pilot right now with our utility, Rocky Mountain Power. They have a 600-unit facility, multifamily housing. Every single home has battery in the home. They have solar. It's 100% energy efficient. It's a fully electric building, but they're looking and testing it how they can actually bid into the market. Sure. So I think absolutely the open spaces are key in where we get the geothermal, but bringing it back to our urban centers is also going to be really fundamental for what needs to happen in the innovation space. It's
getting exciting. I think we're wrapping up on time, so I'll make a closing thing, let you wrap it up, Laura. But I think the statement, the message that I'd like to pass along from Secretary Perry, from the White House, and from what we're doing is that we are here to help. The Office of Technology Transitions has been given the resources and the blessing to open up the front door of the Department of Energy. Oftentimes when I give speeches, I put up a picture of the Forrestal building, which is, if you've seen it, probably the ugliest building in Washington, D.C. HHS is up there too. But you literally can't find the front door of the building. And at the Department of Energy, at the Office of Technology Transitions, that's what we're here to do, is be your front door, your industry, your organization, and your area. We're here to be the front door. We're here to help you find the right place to help us help you in moving all of our missions forward. And I just want to reiterate, everybody's on our side on this technology transitions and commercialization mission and getting technology moved out into the market. So believe in yourself, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Connor. I believe in you. And appreciate the partnership we have with DOE. We'll be hosting Idaho National Labs in Utah in just a couple of weeks. We'll be bringing in commercial banking interest as well as industry research initiatives. It's going to be really exciting. So we're thrilled to continue to grow the partnership and appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.